Okay, so today we're diving into a story that's kind of like something out of a spy thriller, but it's real. And we're talking about the GSA, the General Services Administration.
GSA.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of it?
I think I've heard of it, but
Most people haven't.
I don't really know what it is.
Yeah, and you know what? Most people haven't. But trust me, this agency impacts your life every day more than you realize.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
This is like a seriously powerful agency that most people don't know anything about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating.
Yeah, so what do they do?
They kind of do everything.
Okay.
And they're this under-the-radar agency that touches nearly every facet of the government.
Uh-huh.
For example, did you know that they're basically the landlords for almost the entire federal workforce?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So think about that.
Yeah.
Like all the office space that the government uses,
Wow.
it's all managed by the GSA.
So they're like a really big real estate company.
Basically, yeah. But we're not just talking about a few office buildings here.
The GSA manages more square footage than any company on the planet.
No way.
Yes, way. It's something like 360 million square feet.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's
I
mind-boggling.
can't even imagine.
It's just paperwork galore. And that's not all.
Wait, there's more?
Oh, yeah. Buckle up.
Okay.
They're also the government's ultimate shoppers.
What do you mean?
I mean, they handle over $100 billion in contracts every year.
Wow.
Everything from the pens and paper clips keeping the bureaucrats busy
Uh-huh.
to the fighter jets that, are protecting our skies.
Really?
It all goes through the GSA.
That's incredible.
It's like Amazon Prime for the government, but on a scale that would make Bezos like
sweat a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But wait, there's more.
More.
They also build the tech infrastructure that lets different parts of the government actually talk to each other.
Oh, wow.
So they're like the central nervous system for Uncle Sam.
They really do everything.
I know, it's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
But here's where things take a turn. For the dramatic, you sent us a stack of articles about some seriously wild changes happening at the GSA.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to try to break down why this matters to you, because it really does.
I'm all ears.
What's happening right now at the GSA could ripple outwards, impacting the whole federal government.
Wow.
And potentially even your life.
Okay. This is serious.
It is. It's a story of budget cuts, surveillance, and the blurring lines between the government and the private sector.
Sounds like a movie.
I know, right? So let's start with the biggest bombshell.
Okay.
The GSA is facing budget cuts of epic proportions.
Wow.
We're not talking about, a little trim here and there. They're slashing the budget in half.
Half?
Which means billions of dollars.
Billions with a B.
Billions with a B are just poof, gone.
That's crazy.
I know. This is a move that's practically unheard of in government.
Really?
Usually budget adjustments are very incremental. A few percentage points here and there.
Yeah.
But 50%, that's a seismic shift.
That's huge.
It's massive. And it begs the question, why?
Yeah. Why?
Why such drastic action? Is this really about efficiency, as some are claiming? Or is there something else going on?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to believe that cutting the budget in half would make things more efficient.
Right.
It just seems like something else must be happening.
And what does a budget cut of this magnitude even look like?
Right.
Like in practical terms.
Yeah.
What gets sacrificed when you suddenly have to operate on half the funds? Well, unfortunately, it means thousands of jobs are on the chopping block.
Oh, wow.
There's potential closures of numerous GSA offices across the country. So we're talking about real people losing their livelihoods, not just, numbers on a spreadsheet.
That's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And it's a really tough situation because on one hand, you hear the argument that smaller government is more efficient.
Right.
It saves taxpayers money.
Yeah, you hear that a lot.
Yeah. And then there's the other side where critics are worried that these cuts will cripple essential services.
Yeah.
And harm the people who really rely on those services.
That's a good point.
So how do you even begin to weigh those competing priorities?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It's a real dilemma. Where do you draw the line? And with an agency as vital as the GSA, the potential fallout from these cuts is just really hard to predict.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect.
Exactly. And for those who are lucky enough to survive the cuts and keep their jobs at the GSA, it sounds like they're walking into a very different work environment.
Oh, really?
One where Big Brother is watching.
Like really watch.
Really watching, like all the time. The level of surveillance being implemented for the remaining staff is raising eyebrows.
Yeah, I bet.
To say the least. It feels very dystopian.
Wow. So paint me a picture. What does this intense monitoring actually look like for an average GSA employee?
Okay, so imagine every single keystroke you make
Okay.
being recorded
Uh,
and analyzed. Every email you send, every website you visit,
wow.
every private message,
Okay.
all captured
Uh-huh.
and potentially scrutinized.
That's intense.
That's the reality facing GSA employees
Wow.
with this new key logging system.
Hold on, key logging.
Yeah, key logging.
That sounds like something hackers use.
I know, right?
Not the government.
It's crazy. So to be clear, key logging software
Yeah, what is that exactly?
records every single keystroke,
Oh, wow.
giving basically a complete picture of everything you do on your computer.
They can see literally everything you type.
Pretty much. You can understand why GSA employees, especially the ones who are working on sensitive tech projects, are freaking out.
Yeah, I would be too.
It's not just about someone like reading your emails.
Right.
It's about potential cybersecurity risks. Because if this keylogging software is vulnerable,
Right.
it's like leaving a back door wide open for hackers
Oh, no.
to just waltz right in.
It's some of the most sensitive government systems.
Exactly. And that raises the question, is all this surveillance actually making us safer? Right. Or is it creating new vulnerabilities?
That's a great question.
And even if we set aside the cybersecurity implications, what about the impact on privacy?
Right. What happens to all that data they're collecting?
Exactly.
Who has access to it?
Uh-huh.
And what safeguards are in place to prevent it from being misused?
These are all important questions. And it's not just about government employees either,
Oh, really?
right? If the government starts normalizing this level of surveillance,
Right.
where does it stop?
Yeah.
Could this eventually trickle down and impact our own digital privacy?
That's a scary thought.
I know, right? It's a slippery slope.
It really is.
And we haven't even gotten to the most intriguing part of the story,
There's more.
the connection to Elon Musk
Elon Musk.
and his DOGE team.
Okay, now we're talking.
Yeah, this is where it gets juicy.
All right, I'm all ears.
Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX flamethrowers. What does he have to do with the GSA? And all of this government shakeup.
Yeah, it seems random.
It does seem very random, but there is a connection. So DOGE
Do duty.
stands for Department of Government Efficiency.
Okay.
But it's not actually like an official government department. It's more like President Trump's personal task force. And Elon Musk is the spearhead.
Really?
Their mission is to basically shrink the federal government
Okay.
and make it run more like a lean, mean Silicon Valley startup.
So like a tech company.
Exactly.
Interesting. So budget cut surveillance.
Uh-huh.
Now we've got Elon Musk's team involved.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly is DOGE's role in all of this?
That's a good question.
Are they the ones calling the shots?
Yeah. Are they the masterminds behind all these changes at the GSA? Well, DOG's influence, especially within the GSA's Technology Transformation Services Unit, or TTS, is definitely raising eyebrows.
So they're like embedded within the GSA.
They are. We're talking about a group from the private sector with their own agendas and their own priorities. Being given access to some of the government's most sensitive systems.
Hold on. What kind of sensitive systems are we talking about?
We're talking about systems that contain classified information data on federal employees.
Wow.
And even data on individuals who have interacted with the government in various capacities.
So like our data.
Potentially, yeah. It's a lot of potentially sensitive information.
That's for sure.
And it raises some serious questions about oversight.
Yeah.
And potential conflicts of interest.
Huge red flags.
Huge red flags. So on one hand, you could argue that bringing in someone like Elon Musk,
Right.
with his track record of innovation,
Yeah. He's done some amazing things.
he has, could help modernize and streamline government processes.
Okay. I can see that.
But on the other hand, giving someone from the private sector this much access and influence within the government,
Right.
especially with limited transparency, feels
Risky.
risky. That's the word.
Very risky.
It's a gamble, for sure.
Yeah.
And one that has a lot of people on edge. The mood at the GSA is reportedly grim.
Oh, no.
Employees are worried about their jobs, their futures, and the future of the agency itself.
Wow.
And one employee even went so far as to call the new monitoring system Soviet style.
Soviet style.
Yeah, pretty chilling stuff.
That's intense.
It is. It's definitely unsettling. Just imagine going to work every day,
Yeah.
knowing that every keystroke, every email is being recorded,
Yeah.
and potentially scrutinized.
Like someone's watching you all the time.
Yeah, it's enough to make anyone paranoid.
I would be paranoid.
And paranoia can lead to self-censorship.
Oh, that's a good point.
People might be less likely to speak up,
Right.
to raise concerns, to challenge decisions if they feel like they're constantly being watched.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
What does that do to the culture of an organization?
I mean, it can't be good.
It stifles creativity, innovation, critical thinking.
Right.
It creates an environment of fear and mistrust.
Oh.
And honestly, it doesn't sound very efficient to me. How much time and resources are they going to waste monitoring every single keystroke
Of thousands of employees.
I know, it's crazy. It's incredibly ironic that they're slashing budgets,
Right.
laying off workers in the name of efficiency.
Uh-huh.
But then they turn around and spend who knows how much money on this invasive surveillance system.
Yeah, where's the efficiency in that?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It raises questions about the true motivations behind all of these changes.
Yeah, what are they really trying to do here?
Is this really about saving money and streamlining government, or is it about something else entirely?
Like what?
Is it about control,
Control.
limiting dissent, creating an environment where people are afraid to speak out?
That's a scary thought.
It is. And here's another head scratcher.
Okay.
They're cutting budgets,
Right.
laying off workers, implementing this intense monitoring system.
Okay.
But at the same time, they're forcing everyone back into the office.
Oh, no more remote work.
No more remote work. Didn't we learn anything from the past few years about the benefits of flexible work arrangements?
It seems like a step backward,
It does.
especially in terms of like work-life balance and attracting top talent.
Exactly. And let's not forget the logistical nightmare of consolidating everyone into these regional hubs.
All right.
They're trying to save money, but relocating thousands of employees
All right.
and potentially building new office spaces sounds incredibly expensive.
It does.
It's all very confusing.
Yeah, I'm starting to get a little confused myself.
And it makes you wonder if these decisions are being driven by data and logic or by something else entirely.
Right. It feels like there's something else going on here.
It does. And that's a question that we need to keep asking.
Yeah.
It brings us back to the central theme of this deep dive.
Okay.
Is the GSA overhaul a necessary step towards modernization? Or is it a dangerous precedent that sacrifices transparency, privacy, and individual autonomy in the name of efficiency?
That's a big question.
It is. It's a question that we need to grapple with.
Definitely.
And we're going to continue this conversation after the break, so stay tuned.
So before the break, we were talking about this massive shakeup at the GSA.
Yeah.
And how Elon Musk's DOGE team is playing like a key role.
Uh-huh.
But let's shift gears for a second
Okay.
and zoom in on like the human cost of these changes.
Yeah, the people.
Yeah. Remember, thousands of GSA employees are facing the possibility of losing their jobs.
Right. It's heart-wrenching, really. Imagine getting that news, your whole career, your livelihood,
Yeah.
suddenly like up in the air.
Poof.
Yeah, and the way they're deciding who stays and who goes
Right.
is based on these three very specific criteria,
Yeah.
which honestly raise a whole bunch of questions.
Okay, let's break down these criteria.
Okay.
Because they reveal a lot about the priorities behind these changes.
Uh-huh.
The first one is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Your job has to be required by law.
Oh. Okay.
So if there's a legal mandate that the GSA has to perform a certain function,
Right.
those positions are relatively safe, at least for now.
Okay, so basically, if your job is written into some, like, dusty old law somewhere,
Yeah,
you're good.
you're probably okay.
But what about everyone else?
Well, that's where the second criteria gets a little murky.
Okay.
Your work has to be deemed critical to the GSA's mission.
Critical.
But who gets to define what's critical?
Yeah, that's a great question. Critical seems pretty subjective.
It is.
Couldn't that open the door for favoritism?
Potentially.
Like maybe certain apartments or certain projects
Right.
get prioritized over others,
Yeah.
even if they're not actually more essential to the overall mission of the GSA.
It's a possibility. And it raises concerns about bias creeping into the decision-making process.
Right. Could this be a way to like quietly reshape the GSA's priorities,
Uh-huh.
pushing it in a direction that aligns with a particular agenda?
It's something to think about for sure.
It's something to think about. And
Yeah.
then there's the third criteria,
Yes.
which is honestly kind of mind-blowing. To keep your job at the GSA, your work has to generate revenue.
Really.
It's like they're running a business, not a government agency.
That's a key point.
Hmm.
It reframes the purpose of a government agency.
Right.
Is the primary goal to serve the public good,
Uh-huh.
even if it means operating at a loss in some areas,
Right.
or Should government agencies be focused on maximizing revenue,
Okay.
even if it comes at the expense of other priorities?
That is a really fundamental question about the role of government in society.
It is.
And it sounds like these criteria are going to have a big impact on the types of jobs that get prioritized at the GSA.
Exactly. We can already see a pattern emerging jobs in areas like IT procurement, contract management.
Uh-huh.
Those are likely to be seen as essential because they relate to revenue generation
Okay.
or legally mandated functions.
But what about those less quantifiable roles?
Yeah.
Like, what about the people in communications or administrative support
Oh.
or the folks who handle stakeholder engagement? Those jobs might not directly generate revenue,
Yeah.
but they're still vital to the smooth operation of the agency.
They are. Under these new criteria, those roles are definitely at risk.
Right. And it's not just about the individuals losing their jobs.
Right.
What happens to the overall morale and effectiveness of an agency when entire departments are deemed non-essential?
It sends a message that some contributions are valued more than others,
Great.
even if they're all essential to making the agency actually function.
It's demoralizing. It creates this feeling that your work isn't valued,
Definitely.
even if it's essential.
And it raises the question again, is this really about efficiency?
Yeah.
Or is it about reshaping the GSA in a way that favors certain types of work over others?
Uh-huh. And remember, this is all happening against the backdrop of that Soviet-style surveillance system.
Oh, right.
It's creating a very chilling atmosphere for the employees who remain.
Yeah, it's unsettling, to say the least.
Can you imagine going to work every day? Knowing that every keystroke you make, every email you send is being recorded
Yeah,
and potentially scrutinized.
right. It's like someone's watching you all the time.
Yeah. It's enough to make anyone paranoid.
Definitely. And paranoia can lead to self-censorship.
Oh, that's a good point.
People might be less likely to speak up,
Right.
to raise concerns,
To challenge decisions.
if they feel like they're constantly being watched.
Right. What does that do to the culture of an organization?
It stifles creativity, innovation,
Yeah.
critical thinking.
Right. It creates an environment of fear and mistrust.
Yeah.
And honestly, it doesn't sound very efficient to me.
It doesn't.
How much time and resources are they going to waste monitoring every single keystroke?
Of thousands of employees.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah, it seems counterproductive.
It's incredibly ironic that they're slashing budgets,
Right.
laying off workers in the name of efficiency,
Uh-huh.
but then they turn around and spend who knows how much money on this invasive surveillance system.
Yeah, where's the efficiency in that?
It makes you question their priorities.
It really does.
Yeah.
It raises questions about the true motivations behind all of these changes.
Yeah. What are they really trying to achieve here?
Is this really about saving money and streamlining government?
Right.
Or is it about something else entirely
It's
controlled?
limiting dissent.
Yeah, creating an environment where people are afraid to speak out.
It's a scary thought.
It is.
And here's another head scratcher.
Okay.
They're cutting budgets,
Uh-huh.
laying off workers,
Right.
implementing this intense monitoring system,
Right.
but at the same time, they're forcing everyone back into the office.
Back into the office.
No more remote work.
Wow.
Didn't we learn anything from the past few years about the benefits of flexible work arrangements?
It seems like a step backward.
It does, in
All
terms
right.
of work-life balance and attracting top talent.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget the logistical nightmare of consolidating everyone into these regional hubs.
Oh, yeah.
They're trying to save money,
Right.
but relocating thousands of employees and potentially building new office spaces sounds incredibly expensive.
It does. It doesn't add up.
It's very confusing.
Yeah, there are a lot of contradictions here.
And it makes you wonder if these decisions are being driven by data and logic
Right.
or by something else entirely.
It feels like there's an agenda at play here.
It does. And that brings us back to the central question of this deep dive.
Okay.
Is the GSA overhaul a necessary step towards modernization? Or is it a dangerous precedent that sacrifices transparency, privacy, and individual autonomy in the name of efficiency?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is. And it's a question that we need to keep asking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is about more than just the GSA.
Right.
This is about the kind of government we want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the future we want to create.
We need to be having these conversations now.
We do, because the decisions being made today are going to have a lasting impact.
That's for sure.
And we need to make sure that those decisions are in the best interest of everyone.
Agreed. So what's next in this deep dive?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have. But we're not done yet. When we
Yeah.
come back, We'll wrap up this deep dive with some final thoughts
Okay.
and try to connect the dots on what this all means for the future of the GSA, the government, and maybe even for you.
Alrighty.
Okay, so we're back. And we've been talking about this GSA shakeup. It's been a wild ride so far, from
Yeah.
budget cuts and layoffs to surveillance and Elon Musk's DOGE team. It's a lot to take in.
It really is. It's like all these different trends colliding at once.
Yeah. The
Wait.
push for smaller government, the blurring lines between the public and private sectors, and this increasing reliance on technology for both efficiency and control.
Yeah, it's like a recipe for disruption.
Yeah. And it seems like the GSA is becoming the testing ground for all of these ideas.
Yeah.
If these changes are considered successful, do you think we'll see this approach applied to other agencies?
I think it's definitely a possibility. I mean, the GSA is such a huge reach across the government. It could easily become the model for how to make these kinds of changes on a larger scale. So what happens if this approach is applied across the board? What are the long-term consequences?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I don't think there are any easy answers. There are definitely arguments to be made on both sides.
Okay, so let's play it out. What's the optimistic view?
Well, the optimistic view is that streamlining processes, cutting bureaucracy, and leveraging technology could really improve government services, make things faster and more efficient, save taxpayer money.
So potentially a win-win.
Yeah, in theory. But there are also some significant risks to consider.
Like what?
Well, what happens when you reduce oversight and concentrate power in the hands of a select few?
That's a good point.
What happens when transparency takes a backseat to the pursuit of efficiency?
Yeah, those are important questions.
They are.
It's like that old saying, you can't cut your way to growth. Sure, you might save some money in the short term, but if you cut too deep, you risk damaging the whole system.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the human cost. Thousands of people are losing their jobs, their livelihoods. And those who manage to keep their jobs are entering this work environment that feels very distrustful and hostile.
Right, where every move is being watched and monitored. It's pretty demoralizing.
It is. It creates a culture of fear, and that's not conducive to innovation or progress.
So we're potentially sacrificing transparency, privacy, and individual autonomy in the name of efficiency.
It's a trade-off,
Hmm.
and it's a trade-off that we as a society need to be very careful about making.
So is this GSA overhaul a step in the right direction, or is it a warning sign?
I think that's a question that everyone needs to answer for themselves. But it's clear that the GSA is a microcosm of the government as a whole.
Right. What happens at the GSA could have ripple effects across the entire system.
Exactly. And it's up to all of us to pay attention to these changes, to ask questions, to hold our leaders accountable.
We can't just sit back and let these decisions be made without our input.
I agree. We need to be engaged and informed if we want to shape the future of our government.
So that's it for our deep dive into the GSA shakeup. It's been a long and winding road, but we hope you found it informative and thought-provoking.
Yeah, this is just the beginning of the conversation.
It is, and we encourage everyone to continue exploring these issues, to stay curious, to stay informed, and to stay engaged, because the future of our government is at stake.
And remember, the future of our government is the future of our country.
Thanks for listening.